They didn't fire me. That would have made too much noise. Instead, they buried me, quietly, politely, in a position they thought I'd be too tired to question. My name is Nora Whitman. I was 52 years old when they pushed me aside. Not because I made mistakes. Not because I was difficult. Quite the opposite. I was dependable. I was discreet. I was the one who got things done behind the scenes while others took the credit. I had worked at Linton Mutual Insurance for nearly 2 decades. Started as a client service rep, rose through the ranks, and for the last 7 years, I had been senior operations manager in the claims department, the person who knew the ins and outs of every policy system, workflow, and compliance issue. If there was a bottleneck, I cleared it. If there was a risk, I flagged it before legal even noticed. I trained half the department, including some of the very people who now called me old school behind my back. But that didn't matter anymore. Not when the company announced its new direction. Modernization, innovation, fresh perspective. Which, as it turned out, was code for, let's hire someone younger, flashier, and pretend we're evolving. Her name was Kayla Maddox. She was 29, came from a sleek consulting firm in Chicago, and walked into Linton Mutual like she'd been handpicked by the gods of corporate reinvention. Sharp heels, sharper tongue. She spoke in buzzwords and PowerPoint. Everything was synergy and agility and reframing the narrative. She was also my new boss. Technically, it's a lateral move, my director had said. Voice, too sweet to be sincere. You'll be focusing on legacy transition initiatives, supporting Kayla as she implements our transformation roadmap. Translation: we're replacing you, but we're too cowardly to say it out loud. I nodded, smiled, said all the right things. Then I went home and screamed into a pillow. The next morning, I was at my desk at 8 York sharp, like always. But now my title was Strategic Operations Liaison, a position that didn't exist until they invented it to keep me out of Kayla's way. My team was gone, my authority was gone, my responsibilities? Reduced to compiling reports Kayla didn't bother reading, and sitting in meetings where I was only asked to speak when something went wrong. I wasn't just being sidelined, I was being erased. Kayla didn't even try to hide it. Let's keep Nora on the compliance stuff. She's like really good at boring details, she said in a planning call right in front of me. Then turned to me with a smile. No offense. None taken, I replied, and quietly made a note. It was the first of many. Over the next few weeks, I watched Kayla bulldoze processes she didn't understand. She merged systems without consulting. IT. She promised clients automation features that didn't exist. She cut corners, padded numbers, and spun chaos into success stories for the C-suite. And every time something started to unravel, she handed it to me, quietly of course, to fix. Hey Nora, can you just reconcile this data real quick? Mind double-checking these compliance metrics before I present? I threw something together. Can you make it audit safe? At first, I did it. Out of habit. Out of pride. Out of fear, maybe. The fear that if I said no, they'd finally make the demotion official. But slowly, something shifted. It started with a spreadsheet. Kayla had presented a glowing Q3 performance summary to the VP of Operations. Everyone applauded. But when I looked at the file she sent for archiving, the numbers didn't match our actual reports. Not even close. I asked her about it. She waved me off. I tweaked a few figures for the deck. They needed to see momentum. Those tweaks exceed our reported growth by 14%. It's just optics. Don't be dramatic. I sat with that for a long time. Then I opened a private folder on my desktop and named it Kayla Metrics Originals. I began saving copies. Every report she edited, every email she forwarded, every change she made without approval. I documented all of it. Timestamps, metadata, version history. I didn't tell anyone, I didn't confront her, I just watched. And I archived. It was death by 1,000 files. And she was the one handing me the knives. But the final blow didn't come from a spreadsheet. It came from a meeting. A quarterly review with the CFO, where Kayla pitched a new claims efficiency model that I had spent 3 weeks building. She presented it as her own. Even used a few of my phrases, word for word. When the CFO praised her innovation, she smiled and said, It's all about having the right vision. She never once mentioned my name. Later that afternoon, she stopped by my desk. I know it sucks, being behind the scenes, she said too casually. But you're great at it. Like, some people are just better in the background, you know? I smiled. Of course. And I made another note. Because what she didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that I wasn't bitter. I was patient. I didn't need a title to prove my worth. I didn't need a corner office to make an impact. I just needed time. And documentation, and both were stacking up in my favor. They thought they'd demoted me into silence. What they really did was give me the perfect seat to watch them collapse. There's a kind of blindness that happens in boardrooms, a hunger for newness, wrapped in youth, glossed with confidence. It doesn't matter if the ideas are hollow or if the person delivering them barely understands the systems they're trying to fix. If the packaging is shiny enough, everyone applauds. Kayla was a master of the shine. She moved through Linton Mutual like she was on a stage, all hand gestures and confident smirks. She talked fast, always in bullet points. She disrupted. Processes that had taken years to build, replaced them with clunky software we weren't trained on, then blamed IT when systems crashed. And somehow no one saw it. The execs were hypnotized. Every time she pitched a new initiative, they leaned forward like schoolboys at a magic show. I watched them nod along to meaningless charts and vague metrics, ignoring the fine print, the kind of fine print I used to be praised for noticing. But now? I was legacy support, which meant I saw everything from the sidelines and kept records. Kayla's first big win was a cross-departmental reporting overhaul. She pitched it as revolutionary: streamlined data, real-time insights, performance, visibility. In reality, she had cobbled together templates from 2 different vendors, removed half the QA steps, and pushed it live before anyone tested it properly. It broke within 3 days. The customer service team had to deal with the fallout. Wrong claim approvals, duplicate entries, system timeouts. I stayed late that week fixing back-end logs. Quietly, invisibly. Kayla never mentioned it in her debrief with leadership. Instead, she said, "The rollout was smooth overall. Minor hiccups, already resolved. Already resolved. Because of me." But, again, no mention of my name. That was fine. I wasn't collecting praise anymore. I was collecting patterns. After that incident, I started syncing my backup folders to the cloud. Secure, encrypted, time-stamped. I began saving entire chat logs, forwarding relevant emails to my personal archive. I even bought a second phone and started recording key meetings. Legally, of course. Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state. If I was going to be the last person left with a sense of responsibility, I was going to protect myself. The second major red flag came during the Q4 budget planning. Kayla was tasked with presenting projected efficiency gains based on her new automation initiatives. She pulled data from dashboards she didn't build, cherry-picked the best numbers, and ignored every manual correction the claims team had to make daily. Her report, she claimed a 17% increase in claims processing speed. The actual figure, once I compiled the raw numbers, was closer to 3.4%. I drafted an internal memo with side-by-side comparisons, clearly showing the discrepancy. I sent it to her first, quietly, giving her the chance to fix it. Her response? "Nora, I love your attention to detail, but this isn't the kind of thing we need to nitpick. Leadership wants to see momentum, not math. Momentum, not math." I didn't reply. I just saved the email, highlighted that line. It became the name of the subfolder. By now, my collection was growing rapidly. PDFs, Excel files, annotated screenshots. I even had a running list of people who had raised concerns but were shut down. One of them was a junior analyst named Reggie. Brilliant kid. He flagged a bug in Kayla's new reporting tool. It was miscalculating policy risk scores. She dismissed him in a team meeting. "Reggie, maybe let's leave the analytics to the big picture folks, yeah?" He looked humiliated. Afterward, I found him in the break room and told him quietly, "Save everything." His eyes met mine, surprised. Then he nodded. It was becoming clear. I wasn't the only one seeing through her shine, but no one else had the history, the access, or the patience. And that's where I had the upper hand. Because while Kayla was busy shining, I was building a mirror, one she'd eventually have to look into, and the cracks were already starting to show. The third incident was more serious. Kayla began prepping the annual operations report for the company's board, a polished, highly visible document that influenced bonuses, hiring budgets, and stockholder confidence. She asked me to scrub the pre-reporting dataset, meaning clean up anomalies, reformat fields, and make sure nothing would raise red flags. I did what she asked, but I kept a copy of the original file, because I had seen what she was doing. She had deleted entire rows of negative performance indicators, reduced customer complaint numbers by half, merged categories to make underperforming units look better. It wasn't just optimistic, it was fraudulent. I didn't confront her. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I started a new document. Board report, alterations gotcha comparison, XLSX, and I waited. Waited as she strutted into meetings, took credit for the remarkable improvements in operational performance, praised herself for redefining team productivity, and smiled for photos at the company newsletter shoot. They celebrated her with an article titled, Kayla Maddox, a Visionary for the New Era. I printed it, pinned it to my home corkboard, right next to my letter of demotion, not out of bitterness, out of balance. I wanted to remember the moment before the fall, because I could feel it coming. Every day she gave me more ammunition. Every lie she told, I documented. Every shortcut she took, I tracked. And while the executives clinked glasses over her made-up metrics, I sharpened the quietest weapon in the corporate world, proof. And when I was done gathering it, I wouldn't need to raise my voice. I would only need to raise one folder. It started with a client complaint, the kind that doesn't make headlines but shakes foundations from within. A mid-sized employer in Michigan, one of our older corporate clients, flagged a discrepancy in a high-volume claim payout. According to their logs, a batch of claims had been processed with incorrect policy parameters, resulting in a six-figure overpayment. When I read the summary, my heart sank. I knew those fields. I'd built those workflows, and I also knew exactly who had changed them. Kayla. 3 weeks prior, she had authorized a major reconfiguration to the claims processing engine, an efficiency optimization that consolidated review steps and auto-approved categories previously marked for manual verification. I had warned her. These checks exist for a reason, I had said gently. Removing them increases risk, especially with older policies. Nora, she had said, not even looking up from her phone. The future doesn't have time for redundancy. Now that redundancy was about to cost the company close to $300,000. The internal audit began immediately. IT dug through the logs. Compliance started asking questions. And leadership? They wanted a name. A single point of failure. I wasn't surprised when Kayla called me into her office, but I was still unprepared for what she said. Nora, I need your help framing the timeline, she began, voice calm but clipped. We need to show that the flawed process originated before I joined the department. I blinked, but it didn't. Her eyes didn't flinch. We just need to position it as a legacy configuration, one that was still in place when you were overseeing workflows. You've been here longest. It makes sense. I stared at her. You want me to take the fall? It's not about blame, she said smoothly. It's about optics. We need to contain this. I felt my pulse throb in my ears. Contain this. That's what I had been doing for her for months. Cleaning up her messes, smoothing over her mistakes, keeping the ship afloat while she danced on deck. But this was different. This wasn't a missed metric or a fudged report. This was theft. This was reputational damage. This was betrayal. And it was my name they wanted to throw into the fire. I didn't respond. I simply stood, walked out, and returned to my desk. That afternoon, a memo went out from the compliance department. A review is underway to determine responsibility for the claims configuration breach. Historical oversight and process ownership are being evaluated. 2 sentences. That was all it took. The whispers started immediately. People who had once smiled at me in the hallway now avoided eye contact. Some were silent out of fear. Others, out of guilt. And a few, I suspect, had always believed I'd overstayed my welcome. Kayla, meanwhile, floated above it all. She crafted carefully worded statements, attended briefings, and positioned herself as the reformer identifying legacy, vulnerabilities. Her favorite phrase now was, "I inherited a broken system." I watched her say it in a stakeholder meeting, on Zoom, with a straight face. And I realized something chilling. She believed it. She had convinced herself that the truth didn't matter, only the narrative, and that was the moment I knew. This wasn't just negligence, it was war. The final insult came in the form of a write-up, an official HR notice placed in my personnel file citing potential oversight related to legacy workflow, protocols. It was vague, carefully worded, enough to plant doubt but not enough to be illegal. It arrived in a sealed envelope. No conversation, no warning, just quiet condemnation. I went home that night, sat in my kitchen, and stared at the paper. Daniel found me there hours later, still holding it. "I think I finally understand what they see when they look at me," I whispered. He sat beside me. "What?" "A liability they can't control. So they're replacing me with a story that makes them feel better." He didn't speak, just reached across the table and took my hand. That weekend, I didn't rest. I reviewed everything. I opened the backups, reviewed the email threads, analyzed the system changelogs. I found the exact timestamp when Kayla's reconfiguration had been approved, under her login, her authorization code. I found my own email warning her against the change. I found her reply, flippant, dismissive. It was all there, the foundation of my defense. But I wasn't interested in defense anymore. This wasn't about clearing my name, it was about burning theirs. By Monday morning, I had compiled a full dossier, 47 pages, complete with evidence, summaries, annotations. I created a private link to the encrypted file. I didn't send it yet. Not because I wasn't ready, but because I wanted them to keep digging their own grave a little deeper. Kayla's shine was beginning to dull. The CFO was no longer copying her in every email. The VP of Operations had requested process clarity on every new initiative. And someone, I didn't know who, had leaked word to the company's external legal counsel that the internal write-up against me might not hold up under formal review. The cracks were spreading, and I was still standing. Quiet. Still. Strategic. They wanted a scapegoat? They chose the wrong woman. Because while they spent months trying to erase me, I had been preparing to make sure they'd never forget me. I didn't strike immediately. That's the thing about revenge. If you swing too soon, you miss the sweet spot. The moment when silence becomes suffocating, when they start to wonder if they got away with it, or if something is coming. Let them live in that tension. For weeks. I showed up to work like nothing had changed. I smiled. I answered emails. I attended every meeting with my usual nods and note-taking. Kayla even started to relax again, assuming I had accepted my fate. But every time she looked at me, I could see it, a flicker of unease. Like she sensed the storm in the calm, and she was right to be afraid, because the moment I received an email from HR stating that my performance would be under ongoing review, I knew they were preparing to quietly phase me out. Remove me with dignity, perhaps even a retirement package. A clean exit for their records. But I had no intention of leaving quietly. That night, I uploaded my dossier to a private Google Drive folder and titled it, Whitman vs. Linton Phase 1. I shared the link with one person. Her name was Dana Paulson, a former client, now a senior editor at Financial Integrity Weekly, a watchdog publication known for exposing corporate mismanagement. Years ago, when Dana was still managing claims at a hospital group, I had helped her navigate a near-disastrous coverage dispute. We had stayed loosely in touch since. I emailed her a single line. Thought you might be interested in how Linton Mutual defines leadership. Confidential for now. NW. She opened the folder within the hour. 2 hours later, she called me. Her voice was sharp, focused, hungry. Nora, this is big, she said. Like, cover story big, but I need confirmation, someone on record, or something they can't. Dispute. I had both. I gave her permission to reference the documents in context with attribution pending review. I wasn't going public, not yet. But I wanted the temperature to rise. I wanted Kayla and her enablers to feel it before the fire touched them. And oh, they felt it. Within a week, the questions started. It began with an email from legal, asking if I would clarify aspects of a system change timeline. I responded with a PDF, 19 pages, annotated with footnotes. Then compliance wanted insight into the metrics presented to the board. I forwarded them the data comparison sheets. Then IT asked if I knew about unauthorized access to audit protocols. I did. I had it all logged. By the end of that week, the polite curiosity turned into silent panic. Kayla stopped smiling at me in meetings. She started showing up late. Then not at all. The VP of Operations went dark on Slack. The CFO began requesting raw data directly from analysts, bypassing Kayla entirely. HR, suddenly, was reviewing department structure, the corporate version of checking for fire damage without admitting there's a blaze. And then the article dropped. Front page of Financial Integrity Weekly. The numbers game, how won. Woman caught a rising star gaming the system. My name wasn't in the headline, but inside, the story was laid out, a detailed account of how a senior operations liaison had gathered months of evidence exposing false reporting, unethical reconfigurations, and internal cover-ups at Linton Mutual. They quoted Kayla's own words. From the emails, they used screenshots of system logs. They printed my warning memo in full, the one she ignored, and the fallout was immediate. Stockholders began demanding answers. Board members called emergency sessions. Anonymous Glassdoor reviews started piling up. Former employees came out of the shadows, sharing their own stories. The quiet resentment that had simmered within the company for years finally found a voice, and I had handed them the microphone. Kayla was placed on temporary leave. 2 directors resigned to pursue other opportunities. And as for me, I got an invitation to meet with the company's internal ethics committee. Not HR, not my manager. The ethics committee. I walked into that room in a navy blue blazer, hair pulled back, no makeup, just clean, calm clarity. I brought a single, printed copy of my dossier, placed it on the table, and said, "You tried to erase me, so I made a record you couldn't ignore." The meeting lasted 42 minutes. By the end of it, the chairwoman said quietly, "Ms. Whitman, we owe you more than an apology." I nodded. "You owe your employees better leadership." I didn't cry, I didn't gloat, I didn't raise my voice. Just stood up and walked out. The next day, my inbox was flooded. The CEO, who had been conveniently silent during Kayla's rise, offered to meet to discuss restorative opportunities. HR sent a formal notice removing all disciplinary records from my file. One VP even called to personally thank me for my integrity. It was almost funny. They wanted to keep me quiet. Now they couldn't stop talking about me. I declined the meeting with the CEO. I didn't need closure. I had documentation. Instead, I sent a short email. "Thank you. I won't be returning. Nora." Then I logged off my company email for the last time. But I wasn't finished. Kayla Maddox vanished from the office the same way she arrived, with a performance. The morning the article dropped, she was all confidence. Bright red blazer, fresh blowout, heels clicking down the hall like she owned the floor. She walked into the executive conference room with her tablet under one arm, smug as ever. By noon, her office door was closed. By 3 p.m., the blinds were drawn. By the end of the day, her nameplate had been quietly removed. They called it administrative, leave pending investigation. But everyone knew, even the ones who pretended not to. For months, Kayla had walked through our halls like a meteor made of buzzwords. dazzling, fast, and dangerous. Executives orbited her, reports bent to fit her pitch decks. She was the future, and I had been a relic in her way, until the future collapsed under its own fiction. The ethics committee moved quickly, faster than I expected, maybe because they had no choice. Once the article was out, stakeholders started making calls. One board member publicly asked for a transparent accounting of internal decision-making protocols. That's corporate speak for who let this happen and how fast can we fire them. I wasn't in the room for the interviews, but I heard about them. Apparently, Kayla tried to bluff her way through the first hour, denied knowing certain numbers were inaccurate, blamed outdated systems, claimed operational misalignment. But then they showed her the email I'd kept, the one where I warned her about the exact configuration error that triggered the $300K payout debacle. Then they showed her the system logs. Then they showed her the side-by-side report alterations. And finally, they showed her the memo she had accidentally deleted, the one I had reprinted and timestamped, tucked into the dossier. She didn't have answers, because there weren't any left to spin. After that, things moved fast. An emergency? All hands was called the next morning. The CEO appeared on screen, tight-lipped, unusually pale, and said all the right things. We are reviewing our leadership practices. We're committed to transparency and accountability. This is an opportunity to rebuild trust. He never said her name, but her absence was louder than any apology. By Friday, the company's LinkedIn scrubbed every mention of Kayla from their feed. Her visionary leader feature article disappeared. Her employee spotlight vanished. Even the glossy team retreat photo, where she stood front and center, was replaced with a stock image of an office handshake. Corporate memory is short, but mine isn't. Over the next 2 weeks, 3 other executives resigned. 2 directors were reassigned pending restructuring. HR sent out new compliance training. A whistleblower protection initiative was announced. And suddenly, people were very interested in my thoughts on ethical leadership in modern operations. Declined the interviews, not because I was afraid, because I was done being a symbol. I didn't need a seat at the table anymore. I had flipped the whole thing over already. Still, the messages came, from interns, from analysts, from people I barely remembered. I watched everything you went through. You gave the rest of us courage. I thought I was crazy for seeing what she was doing. You made me feel sane. They treated you like background noise. Turns out you were the alarm. Some were longer. Some just said, thank you. But the one that stuck with me most was anonymous. No name. Just 2 sentences. You made them remember what integrity looks like, and what it costs to bury it. That one, I printed, pinned beside my resignation letter, because, yes, I had resigned. On my terms. Not in shame, but in power. I left without a party, without a sheet cake, without a video montage of fun times in the office. And I was fine with that, because what I got instead was peace. No more walking into rooms where people smirked behind compliments. No more watching people half my age fail upward while I held the floor steady. No more pretending to be grateful for being ignored. I didn't burn bridges. I walked away from the ashes they left behind. The only meeting I accepted was with Dana, the journalist who broke the story. She wanted a quote for the follow-up article. You don't have to go on the record, she said. But it would mean a lot. So I said, leadership isn't about being loud. It's about being responsible when no one is looking. They forgot that. I reminded them. She printed it. It ran beneath a new headline, The Quiet Power of Saying Enough. That weekend, I sat on my porch with Daniel and read it aloud. He smiled. So what's next? I didn't know yet, but I had ideas, and for the first time in a long while, I had the freedom to explore them, without fear, without apology, and without needing anyone else's permission. They thought I wanted my old job back, the title, the desk, the authority, but that was never the point. I didn't spend months gathering files, documenting lies, and holding my breath through betrayal just to go back to where I started. No, I wasn't fighting for a seat at their table. I was building my own. After the dust settled, Linton Mutual offered me a generous package, more than I expected. Compensation, legal assurances, a carefully worded letter of regret and gratitude signed by the CEO himself. They offered to restore my title. They even hinted at a promotion, and I said no. I didn't want a better title. I wanted a better legacy. So I took the payout. And I walked away, but I didn't disappear. In fact, I became louder than ever, in my own way. I launched a small consulting practice, Whitman Integrity Strategies. Just me, a laptop, and a mission to help other professionals, especially women over 45, navigate toxic leadership, protect themselves from exploitation, and rebuild after being discarded by the very systems they upheld. The demand was immediate. Got emails from across the country. People in tech, finance, healthcare, all saying the same thing. I thought it was just me. They told me about being sidelined, erased, set up. I listened. And then I helped them document, prepare, and when necessary, push back. Not with rage, with facts. The same way I had. I started hosting small workshops. Coffee shop meetups turned into Zoom seminars. Eventually, I partnered with an HR whistleblower network and created a program called the Paper Trail Protocol, teaching professionals how to gather documentation before it's too late. And I wasn't alone. Remember? Reggie? The junior analyst Kayla humiliated in a meeting? He reached out, said he left Linton Mutual shortly after I did and had been too scared to speak up. I told him what I wish someone had told me years ago. Quiet doesn't mean weak. It means you're listening. And people who listen, we catch everything. He's now working at a data ethics firm. Happier, sharper, stronger. Sometimes I think about the woman I was a year ago, sitting at my desk, demoted, invisible, trying not to drown under the weight of younger, louder voices. I don't pity her. I respect her, because she didn't break. She didn't retaliate with noise. She waited. She watched. And she struck when it mattered most. People say revenge is about destruction, but I've learned it's really about restoration. I didn't destroy Kayla. She did that to herself. I just refused to protect her from the consequences, and in doing so, I reclaimed something far more valuable than a job. I reclaimed my voice, and I used it to help others find theirs. I still get messages from people at Linton. Some from old colleagues, some from new employees. Most are quiet, private, grateful. Because of you, leadership actually listens now. We revised our reporting protocols, thanks to your case. I stood up to my manager last week, thought of you the whole time. I don't need applause. I don't need headlines. Knowing I broke a system designed to break people like me, that's enough. I'm 53 now. I have silver streaks in my hair, laugh lines I've earned, and a clarity that only comes from being underestimated and surviving. Yet I walk into every room knowing I don't have to prove anything. Because I already did. Not through shouting. Not through sabotage. Through truth. Through patience. Through every quiet step they never saw coming.